Welcome back. I can only imagine, based on some of the discussion we had on that question around this table, that it would be an interesting discussion at your tables in terms of, I'm sure, the diversity of views on that issue of when is too much. But let's now move to the question period, and we'll start here in southwestern Ontario, Burlington. And I'm going to send this over to you, Sue.
Okay.
How do you measure employee engagement? Are you sure your responses are accurate and not what you want to hear?
Right. Great question. So right now we do employ an in-house survey, but it's not just about the survey. This is cultural. It's something that we take very seriously in terms of it's no good just punting out a survey, gathering back the responses and then doing nothing or not very much with it. So we have a very transparent culture and approach around this. Our leaders take it seriously. In terms of ensuring it's accurate, we get about a 90+% participation rate. So, again, the data that comes back in is very valid, very robust. We do not tie it to any of our line managers' comp because we don't want any influence of people trying to game their survey responses and cajole their employees to, answer in a certain way. And so that's why we keep it very separate. We take it as very precious input and feedback. We report back anonymously, aggregated data to line managers. They action plan, and we roll the themes up at the enterprise level to understand, what's working well for our employees and where we've got some room from an enterprise perspective to think about things a little differently. That's how we deal with it, Tom.
Thanks, Sue. Ken, this is, I'm going to send this one to you. This is from Toronto, and it's a bit of our theme that we talked about at the outset around compensation is obviously very important, but how do we make sure we get the right balance and some time on development? So the question is from Toronto, what can we do to simplify the compensation side of the HRC focus so that they can focus more of their time on other talent issues that we've been talking about today?
Sure. Well, the very first thing I would do is control of agenda. And a couple of things that we see is a number of issuers will have at least one or two meetings that are compensation free. And they're usually out of the compensation cycle either in the summer or in the early fall. And those are succession, talent development, and there is no compensation on the agenda. The other thing that you can do is with an agenda that does have compensation is don't do it first, because compensation topics more than any other tend to gobble up all sorts of time you didn't want to give them. In terms of actually trying to simplify the programs, obviously that's always desirable, but realistically it's like trying to simplify the mechanics in your car. What you want to make is the car more usable. You don't actually want the car to run less well because it's been simplified. I do think there's a lot of good work that has been and needs to be done more broadly on how material is presented to a board for decisioning. And if you're getting, admittedly now electronically, but the electronic equivalent of a sort of inch-thick book, you need to do something about that. One thing is to make sure that there is a memo which summarizes what is the issue, what are the key points, and what is the author seeking. Are they looking to inform you, or are they looking for a decision? And everything else is subordinate to that, often layered once or twice below, that if you need more information, you can look here. That way, one, your committee members might actually read it, because if you send them 100 pages, I guarantee you virtually none of them will have read it. And if they have read it and it makes sense and there's no great issue, you've greatly simplified. So that doesn't simplify the content, but it can be a huge process improvement, and it's there for the doing.
I think it does simplify the content. I think you're absolutely right about the approach that you're taking, but I think it actually does, because writing that précis forces management to think through the issues in a way that they don't have to think through them if they send you the 100 or the 1,000-page document. There are some boards that I've been associated with where we have banned PowerPoints in the board books, because PowerPoints don't allow you to work your way through management's reasoning, whereas a précis does do that. So I think you're right on that, and that would be my recommendation as well. And ban the PowerPoints in the board book. Use the PowerPoints during the presentation, but ban them from the board book. Yeah. Oh, except for the financial results, so that the expert could read them.
I was going to say, Paul, banning PowerPoints, that's a knife to the heart of a consultant.
There has been, by the way, lots of discussion at that issue, and let's get to the real issues, not the long diatribe. Heather, someone has picked up some of your predictions and wondering about a couple elements of that. And specifically, the question is, can you be more specific or provide any examples of the new programs, changes, modernizing that some HR groups, organizations are developing?
Yeah, so I'll give you three quick examples of what some organizations are doing. The first one is around leadership and establishing formalized networking programs where you expect leaders to be connected out to the competition, the community. That serves two purposes. One is to be able to understand and sense what's happening in the market, and secondly is from a succession perspective. If they have inside successors that they're building, they're required to do other things. They have a sense of who the best in the market is. Again, you have to be deliberate about this and measure it, but there's a number of tangible benefits that drives. The second example is around taking advantage of the HR and the richness of the HR data that you have in order to solve business problems. Looking at things like performance analytics and understanding where you have high performance versus low performance and what are the things that are happening so that you can actually replicate it where you've got low performance. Looking at analytics to find retention risk that you have. And then the last area that I would suggest is around engagement. And some organizations are using a tool that is 3 to 5 questions that they send out on a weekly basis to employees that is transparent to the employees and the leaders in the organization around how are they feeling about the impact that they're having, how do they feel about their career and the work that they're doing, and do they feel that they're getting enough time to meet their personal commitments. It's a very good way to understand the engagement of your employees. Those would just be 3 examples.
Here's another question on compensation, but Paul, I'm going to let you take a crack at this one. What extent do you see non-regulated, for instance, private companies, private equity firms, applying similar rigor in their compensation programs to those of public or regulated organizations?
So, Don, everybody's got a study that they can come up with to help them out in circumstances like this. And I found one of a couple of professors who'd done a study of Australian companies, and they found that independent directors eroded the value of the top 200 Australian companies by $40 to $50 billion over what the period was, and they went on to say that one of the ways to overcome that was to give majority shareholders a bigger role in dealing with the issues of the company, including the compensation issues. So in response to this question, I would have said that in the private equity field, it's probable that pay for performance is much more vigorous than it is in the public sector without all of the variables that we're forced to use in the public environment. It's either did you perform or didn't you, and if you didn't, you're gone, and if you did, we're going to pay you mightily. Now, if the question was, how can we get private equity companies to pay their principals less, I'm afraid I don't have an answer.